Namaskar. In this episode of Dil Se, we'll talk about the turmoil that's taking place in international relations. And we'll ask the question, where do we stand? But before that, something interesting happened this afternoon when someone met me and said, he said, you know the difference between India, China, and the United States of America? China is run by engineers. The United States of America is run by lawyers. And India is run by politicians. And the politicians mostly have no domain knowledge of what they're doing. That's a very sad story. Perhaps that's the reason China is growing in economic heft and political heft. America with Trump, we don't know what he's going to do next. But this much we know, that he has imposed 50% tariffs on goods that the US imports from India. Huge impact on the Indian economy. On the other hand, we have very little choices. The Americans say, and Donald Trump says, that because you import cheap Russian oil, convert it, refine it, sell it to the Europeans, earn dollars, and then go back and buy Russian oil, and in a sense weaponize Russia by attacking the Ukraine. So in a sense you are fueling the war in the Ukraine. The fact of the matter is that a lot of more gas is imported by the Europeans than us. A lot of the China imports a lot of oil, perhaps more than us. And of course, it's our position, and that's what our foreign minister has been saying, that look, at one point in time you told us we should buy oil, crude oil from the Russians because it balanced the price of crude oil in the international market of a trade deal with the United States so soon. So we are in a bind. The MSME sector is going to be badly hurt. Also, 30% of the remissions that we get from people abroad, that is the foreign exchange that we get into this country, 30% comes from the United States of America. So it's going to have a huge impact on our economy. On the other hand, our relationship with China is not so great. You know that after 2020 and what happened at Galwan and the occupation of the Chinese of our territory. Also their claim that they want Arunachal Pradesh or bits of Arunachal Pradesh. Of course, we're trying very hard to now sort of suggest that we are getting closer to China. But as you know, China and Pakistan are hand in glove. The Chinese are going to weaponize them, arm them in every possible way. Recently went to Russia. We had a meeting with Putin. Putin is perhaps going to come here. So we don't know what's going to happen, but we have three extraordinary people with us today from whom we're going to try and find out what's likely to happen. Jaimini Bhagwati is here. Thank you very much. MIT PhD from Tufts, 1976 IFS, 1980 you joined the Atomic Energy, worked at the World Bank from 1991 to 2005, joined Secretary Capital Markets in the Ministry of Finance, ambassador to EU, Belgium, Luxembourg, and from 2012 to 2013 you were High Commissioner to the UK. Thank you very much for being here. Navtej, thank you very much. Old friend of mine, Navtej, 1980 IFS batch, 30 years, 8 years in the Foreign Service, Ambassador to Israel, High Commissioner to UK, Ambassador to the US, 14 to 16 Secretary West, spokesperson of the External Affairs Ministry from 2000, I think the longest to 2008, the longest I think any person has been there. And of course, apart from that, a great writer, fiction and non-fiction both. Book on Nanak, Second Thoughts, Indians at Herod's Gate, translated Zafarnama. Thank you very much for being here. Raja Mohan, academic, I read your pieces and every time I read them in the Express and other places, I'm enriched. Amazing the way you write, your understanding of international affairs. You have a PhD in international relations, visiting professor in the Institute of South Asian Studies in Singapore, founding director of Carnegie India, also was with ORF and the CPR, professor at JNU, and of course a member of the National NSAP. Thank you all for being here. Jaimini, tell me what's happening.
I wish I knew, in which case I would have made a lot of money, basically investing in the relevant stocks. But jokes apart, the one destabilizing factor that we all know about is the current US president. You could say that he's a destabilizing factor, an unsettling factor. He has decided to, pardon me, take decisions without necessarily consulting people who are subject experts. So instead of talking about President Trump and his policies towards the EU or to Russia or to China and so on, let me focus for a moment about home.
Okay.
Policies towards India. I think to some extent, it is his sense of grievance that we did not immediately, like Pakistan, acknowledge that he was the factor, most important factor in the cessation.
He repeats it like a gramophone record every other day. Huh?
Very true. Cessation of hostilities, mind you, it's not, we have not declared a ceasefire, it's only cessation of hostilities. So there is that grievance, and then I think he is not perhaps aware of basic economics, that if you have a balance of trade deficit is not necessarily something which is very adverse. You have perhaps a lot of foreign direct investment. You don't get all that much from India, but just two numbers which will give you a sense of the transatlantic relationship. Mm-hmm. The total amount of US FDI in nominal terms, if you just add it up over the last 30 years, is 2.7 trillion USD. The EU in the US is 2.4 trillion USD. The comparable number for China in the US is 148 billion.
I see.
So, sorry, that is from US to China. China to US is only 25 billion.
Oh.
So, you get a sense of the relationship. I deliberately gave these numbers, even though I began by talking about India, is to, we are a relatively small factor economically, and Trump, I think, in the second presidency particularly, seems to be driven by the need to improve America's finances. Whether the policies he's adopting are correct or not.
He says billions of dollars are coming in because of customs duties and all that stuff.
Your consumers will have to pay more.
And inflation will always obviously happen if the tariffs are increased, right?
Absolutely, over a period of time, that's precisely what's going to happen. So my sense is that flux and uncertainty is the order of the day. So for India, since that's where we are, that's where we live, and that's the country we love, we need to keep our head down. I was mentioning it a moment back. Tall trees are blown over when there's a storm. The grass survives. You keep your cool and manage your affairs domestically well. You referred in your introductory remarks to the MSMEs. They were hit very badly by demonetization. I'm not going to get into the pluses and minuses of it. And then somewhat imperfect implementation of GST. I'm sure everybody here knows that about 40 to 45% of our labor force is MSMEs. Yeah. Another 40 to 45%. You notice.
No, maximum exports to the US are through the MSMEs.
They produce the inputs that even what the larger corporates produce, they get inputs from MSMEs. Right. So we need to be careful about how we treat them and how we deal with them. And we know from various records that they are hurting. And while I would like to believe the government of India's figures on growth being above 6%, I'm not entirely sure. But that is, as an individual, I can have my doubts. I may be completely wrong. But definitely the benefits of growth are not percolating and are not reaching the intended beneficiaries.
Navtej, let me just ask you a simple question. That when you were ambassador to the US, the US was a different kind of country. Today it's entirely different. But I want to ask a specific question. In diplomacy, is personal friendship a guide to good foreign policy?
Well, thank you very much. I think personal friendship, say at the leadership level, or personal chemistry more than friendship. Friendships, I'm not sure whether there are really friendships, but there's a personal chemistry. You like sitting with someone, you like having a chat with someone, you entertain him over dinner or lunch. I think it helps because if you can't stand the sight of the other guy, then clearly that plays into your thinking. But if that helps, having said that, I think it's only got a limited value because it's nice, a bit of a cherry on top of the cream of the cake, but there has to be the cake. So there has to be a basic relationship. There has to be a relationship that is mutually beneficial, a relationship in which both of them see some advantage of taking it forward, making it stronger. So just by personal friendship, this way or that way, I don't think you can...
I think I should reformulate the question. Modi ji went there and Trump in the first presidency. Ab ki baar Trump sarkar.
Before that.
Before
that, I handled as ambassador the first visit, the first meeting of Prime Minister Modi and President Trump. They had not met each other earlier. And this was in June 2017.
Okay.
This was 6 months after Trump had come in. And what we had seen in those 6 months was not very comforting.
I see.
Because a lot of world leaders, a lot of allies particularly, made a beeline for not even Washington, for New York.
Okay.
Before his inauguration, when he was sitting in Trump Tower, the Japanese and others were hanging around New York trying to get a meeting because nobody quite knew what Trump was.
Right.
Nobody knew who the Secretary of State was going to be. Otherwise, for Hillary Clinton, every job had been slotted. For Trump, there was nobody. So people were winging their way in different ways, trying to get an in into the US leadership. And they didn't get a very great welcome.
I see.
He made very, very offhand remarks about the Chinese, about the Japanese, about the Koreans. Angela Merkel had a terrible visit.
Yes.
Theresa May had a frozen visit. So, frankly, we were not very keen that the Prime Minister should go in very early.
Oh, really?
And he didn't. We waited six months until we had a feel for the White House.
Right.
Because the State Department was virtually defunct. There was a Secretary of State, but I remember walking those corridors and my steps would resound because it was empty.
Oh, I see.
The rooms were not staffed.
I see.
So you couldn't, the protocol didn't know anything. They couldn't figure out a prime ministerial program. So you had to deal only with the White House. And it took us a while, but we managed. And that first day, the meeting went very, very well on a personal level.
I see.
Because he had a certain there was a certain, at least Trump had a very good impression of the Prime Minister. They met immediately and they spent almost the entire day in the White House.
Oh, that's great.
Over lunch, over one-on-one meeting, a press conference in which Trump stayed on message, surprisingly. And so for an ambassador, it was a great relief. At the end of the day, I could, open my collar button and say, "Ho gaya." But I think there were other visits, which you mentioned.
Yes.
And that was after I had left, but they had the big rallies and all that. The difference is that, there was a time when Trump was a little uncertain. He didn't have his agenda farmed out. He didn't have enough of the loyalists around him. And in these 4 years that he was out, he feels highly victimized by the system.
Right.
He's been hauled through courts and all sorts of things have happened. So this time, he has picked people only on the basis of loyalty, not competence. So nobody is questioning him. And he's running riot. So whatever restraint there was on him, whatever advice he could take, Today it is, gets up in the morning. Today I want to drive on the left-hand side of the road. Tomorrow I'll drive on the right side of the road. So I think our relationship has also got caught to a large extent in, as Jaimini mentioned, there's a personal peak.
Why is that?
Well, I think frankly, one can only
Is it
guess.
because of the proximity?
I think
of
one is the trade deal wasn't going the way he wanted.
Right.
B, this Operation Sindoor didn't get the credit. Three, the Pakistanis offered him the Nobel Prize or offered a recommendation for the Nobel Prize. And four, frankly, he doesn't care about policy. So, the basic underpinning from the American point of view, the importance of India as a strategic partner was a kind of tactical, if not strategic, convergence on China. Ever since Bush II, Condi rise, etc., that China's rise is inevitable. India is a good partner to have. Indo-Pacific.
Why has the bonhomie been lost then between Trump and Modi ji?
I don't think, as I think
There was no bonhomie.
I think we overestimate
Okay.
this thing, the fundamental presumption which came in at the beginning of Trump 2, that since we handled Trump 1, we are comfortable with Trump 2. I think that presumption was misplaced.
Oh, I see. So therefore, there was an error of judgment in a sense. Yeah, possibly. Raja, you were you really analyze this from an international standpoint, and you look at the future. Where do you think this is going to go?
I think when we're looking at Trump, I think we got to separate his personal unpredictability, vindictiveness to his opponents, his caprice, his megalomania. All these are given. But I think that should not come in the way of seeing what he's trying to do in the US and to the world is really a revolution, or a counter-revolution, if you like, that the assumptions of how the world ought to run or is running for the last 80 years, he's going with a pickaxe at the fundamentals of the international system. So take three broad areas where he has made the big change. One, trade. The assumption of GATT, WTO system of rules will govern global trade. He's saying, no, I'm going to negotiate bilateral deals.
Yeah.
Second, US was a great country for immigration, that you outsourced your manufacturing, you insourced labor. He says that must stop. You need to have reshoring of production. You need to have restoration of manufacturing jobs and largely restore, shall we say, make America white again in a fundamental sense.
Right.
And you can feel that on the ground, that this idea that America was a land of immigrants, that is true historically, but I think the expansive immigration under the Democrats and the opening up of borders today, there's a backlash. And he's actually the movement that supports him. Right. Both is anti-globalization as well as anti-immigration. So in a way, it's not just his personal conviction, that actually his mass base today wants action on those, and he's taking those. The two other areas, I think, on technology, for example. If you see the previous years, the Biden administration was trying to restrain technology, AI and other technologies. He's in full partnership with the Silicon Valley capitalists, and he's saying completely unleash the Silicon Valley capital, some of the new initiatives taken on artificial intelligence, on cryptocurrencies. He's basically saying, guys, go ahead and dominate the world. In fact, his statement last month, US is in an AI race and we're going to win it. So I think this unfolding of a new technological capitalism in the US with full support of Washington, that's a new force. Where did we go wrong? My sense is we had, I think, given the personal relationship between the PM and the president, which was kind of seemingly reinforced in the February 13th summit.
Yes.
I think since probably we underestimated this intensity of the positions on trade. How we negotiated that agreement, I mean, we don't have to get into the details, but their expectation and our willingness, there was a complete mismatch. And I think that has broken down.
But there's another aspect to it. I want your response to it. See, from Trump's point of view, he said America has been done in over the years.
Yeah.
You know, after the Second World War, there was the Marshall Plan.
Yeah.
We tried to sort of empower the European economies, which were destroyed. and we've been, spending money on their defense. Why should we have to give so much to the world? And then we are allowing all the imports from the Europeans, from the Asians to come in, and we're losing out. So in that sense, he says, look, America has been done in. America wants to restore that. That's
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that I think is interesting. What he did a little bit of this in the first term. It's interesting that the Biden administration did not reverse the tariffs on China.
Right.
In fact, the notion, the Biden administration's policy or foreign policy for the middle class was largely playing on Trump's terrain, which is, look, the US has lost out on a manufacturing game. China is rising. Therefore, we need to do something to restore American technological leadership, manufacturing capabilities, and to be able to dominate the international system. And I think we've only seen the trade game so far. I mean, he's also going to go at the financial system.
Of course.
Internationally, he's often his Secretary of Dissent has already talked about changing the rules of the finance, of restoring the dollar's dominance. And our loose talk on de-dollarization, of course, got their attention.
Yeah, we got into trouble with that.
Basically, I mean, he might offer us another 25% if we keep talking about that. But I think we are not interested in de-dollarization. But I think the sense that...
But BRICS would be interested?
Yeah, British, I think its summit is, we are hosting it, I think, later in the year. But before that, we have the SCO. But I think this easy sense of America is declining and we can build a coalition against it and benefit from it, that I think we need to re-examine that. This notion, actually what we're seeing is assertion of American power. And the fact that he was trashing the WTO system, but people lined up in front of the White House to negotiate bilateral. Nobody went to WTO.
All the Europeans?
Yeah, and no one, not even the China. Nobody went to the WTO and said, guys, where is the multilateral system? But I think that is the power. What Trump has said, we import from everyone, therefore I have the leverage against everyone. True. And he said, okay, everything starts afresh, let's do new deals. I think on the Pakistan question, I think these two diplomats sitting here, but I think the wordplay, we got lost on the wordplay. You see, if you look at every major crisis between India and Pakistan, 87 brass tacks, 90 there was a crisis. Then you had 98, 99 Kargil. You had the 2001, 2002 Op Parakram. Then you had the 2008 attack on Mumbai. Then you had Pulwama. Then you had Pahalgam. All of these crises, the Americans were the first responders, diplomatically. Every time the Americans stepped in. So this notion that Americans have nothing to do with this, which we tell ourselves, I mean, that's not accurate.
Interesting.
I think we mentioned it on your show in May.
Yes.
So what the problem was this man, President Trump, even before you announced that we're stopping, he says, I brokered it. Now, the problem is with the word brokered, you didn't deny his involvement. After all, you said Rubio called twice, J.D. Vance called once. So he was dramatically overstating American role, and it was not suitable for our politics.
For a domestic audience.
Yeah, exactly. And then you were underplaying his role, and you got stuck. And this man's ego is no bounds, Trump's ego. So I think that's where we got on the wrong side. If we had played it, look, I remember the same thing happened in Kargil time. In fact, Nawaz Sharif had to go to Washington on a July 4th weekend.
July 4th.
Yeah.
So what we said at that time, and Mr. Vajpayee's answer was, look, thank you for facilitation. This is not mediation, this is facilitation. But I think, unfortunately, in the heat of the moment, we how that got played. And other people used to write books later and say, I did it. Pompeo, 2019 crisis. In his book, he said, look, I had to make a lot of phone calls to avoid a nuclear war. But this man, even before you said it, he's taken credit. And I think that created a huge political problem for Delhi.
But fine, I think Trump, we now know that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But what about the Chinese?
Before I get to the Chinese, in a moment, the SCO summit will take place at the end of this month.
Yeah.
But, one needs to look at it in a historical context. US is not in some kind of a terminal decline. Others have grown. US GDP as a percentage of global GDP after the Second World War was 50%. Even today, it's roughly 25, 26, depending upon whether you count it in US dollar terms or purchasing power parity terms, it'll be less than purchasing power parity terms. So Trump's rise and ability to win even the popular vote, of course, he had a relatively weak opposition in Kamala Harris, is, as Raja has pointed out, there is a racist angle to it. People are uncomfortable. And his support base is not Krugman and people like that in the Ivy League universities. So his support base is people who are mechanics, who are plumbers, who are this or that.
See what he's doing to Harvard. He's saying, I'm going to...
So there is a question of what is popular basis.
Yeah.
Now, let's come to India and where we are and how we deal with all this. I think your question was, what now?
What now? Because, we don't know, we're not going to get much from Trump. I think in Quad also, we don't have much of a role to play. And then the Chinese, we are dependent on the Chinese economy big time. And our deficit with China is about $100 billion.
A year.
A year.
In trade,
In
yes.
trade. So what are our possibilities of maneuverability in this situation?
In anything in life, there are short-term, medium-term, long-term.
So what's the
steps.
short, what's the medium,
The
what's the long?
immediate short-term is to be very careful about our foreign exchange reserves. We don't want a 1991 situation, which will not happen given the fact that we continue to get a sizable amount every year as NRI remittances, and our reserves are around about 600 billion now, give or take.
Remittances from, as I said, 30% from the US alone.
Absolutely. But as of now, I'm not aware of anything except a stray comment that his administration might impose a certain surcharge as you send. I'm not sure that will stand scrutiny in a court of law. After all, you've earned the money, you've paid the taxes in the US, you can remit, it's a convertible currency on the capital account, you can remit money anywhere. We call it remittances from NRIs, many of them must be US citizens who are sending money to parents, etc. So I would say in the short term, we kind of hunker down. We look at the most vulnerable part of our economy is the fact that our capital account is only partially convertible, and we need to be clear that we never get anywhere near a balance of payments crisis. We can weather all other crises, including the rampant unemployment, etc., etc., etc. So having said that's number one. So we look at where does our foreign exchange come from, what are the possible, should we say, risks involved in that, and keep relatively quiet on coming up with an alternative currency, whether it was mentioned first in the BRICS setting or wherever it is, because you don't want to be knocked out of the SWIFT system like the Russians have been, because that creates all kinds of difficulties on a day-to-day basis for exporters and so on.
Our domestic demand base is very robust, so at least that'll keep the economy going.
Yes, within India is very robust from a very small group of people.
Whatever it is, but it is robust.
Relatively robust. And as I said earlier, whether it is 6.3, 6.5, it won't be very much below 6%, our rate of economic growth. So that is, however, all in rupees. So therefore, my initial comments were, be careful on your external balances and ensure that that is not jeopardized in any big way. Having said that, to take a step forward, on the economic and diplomatic front, my sense is that this too shall pass. Mr. Trump will realize very soon, as he has in the Alaska summit with the Russians, that he can't browbeat people. He could not browbeat Putin. We don't quite know what happened. Nothing has been released.
There may be a silver lining there, because if he has cozier relations with Russia, the 25% penalty may go.
It is absurd, as been pointed out by the Indian government and by others, that China buys much more oil from Russia. Of course, they don't export because they consume all of it themselves. So we also have exported, and one particular company, the name starts with an R, and we will not go further.
No, but
than
you
that.
see, the American administration have said that, look, at one point, the import from of Russian oil was 1%. It's gone up to 42%. And ultimately, you're selling to the consumer at a higher price, and all the money is being taken away by the big companies. Who you're benefiting? And these are the big companies ultimately who do a lot of trade.
Yes and no. When you say that only the company is benefiting, the government is pocketing more.
Of course.
Because our bulk of the oil that is sold, oil, petrol, diesel, whatever in India is through Indian oil public sector undertakings. So the PSUs are being able to get oil at a lower price, but since these are government regulated prices at which we get petrol, so the PSUs have made money, which is good or bad depending upon what government does with that PSU profit. If
They
you
contribute to the government, you know that.
No, that is a separate issue. I'm just saying on the balance sheet, if you have more profits, then the Ministry of Petroleum will be in a position to recommend to the cabinet, what do we do with these profits? The company needs to expand oil exploration. We haven't done much of that. We should have done that a long time back. But having said that, so to that extent, that money is in the country. And if one large company has exported, they too will have to pay taxes on their profits.
Of course, no
so
doubt.
to that extent, it is not such a kind of disaster for us. Yes, in terms of people talking about it in the US or Europe, I remember the EU person, the top person talking about it and complaining, and then we pointed out that the EU is buying more oil from Russia than we are in an afternoon than we are doing in a month. So I would not, basic thing is don't push the P button.
Lie low is what you say.
Yeah, panic button should be avoided.
But I wanted to shift this discussion to the Chinese and what are our options there?
I think, see, China, let me come at it from two sides. One is the US-China. So I think US-China has always been a deal in the making. So Trump, right from beginning of Trump 2.0, has seen China as a major challenge, adversary, and yet he's been wanting to make a deal with them. So the minute he finds a deal, he'll make it. He tried twice in the first term. It didn't work out the way he wanted, right? From Mar-a-Lago and the second deal, it didn't work out. This time he's still trying. That's why if you notice, while we are getting 25% more on 27th August, they got a 90-day reprieve.
That's right.
And they import $62 billion worth of oil as against our 35 or 40 billion. So Peter Navarro and others are saying, but they haven't increased it. India has increased it. Now, which is a stupid
They have
argument.
decreased it, in fact.
Yeah. So we are, so I think China is a deal in the making. So we have to be careful with that. Now, as long as there was no deal and there was a strategic convergence between India and the US on China, it was good to play along. So in a way, I think there has been this debate within India that do we sort of put up all of the military strategic sort of option that until China moves away, etc., we are not doing. On the other hand, the whole trade, commerce, investment lobby in India has been shouting for the last 2 years that no, we need China, we open up visas, this, that, tunnel boring machinery, etc.
Now.
Yeah, so now, more than Nathula, I think there are 2 or 3 areas on which this engagement, I don't think if the SCO visit will work it out or the normal, it will happen in due time. One is rare earths.
Yes, that's very important.
So we need them. Our EV sector is languishing, particularly the two-wheeler EVs. You know, the TVS and Heroes and all that. They are running into a huge problem because the rare earth magnets have stopped coming.
Now the urea, that's the other.
Urea is the second thing. And even the most specialized fertilizers, which are for horticulture, that we're not even talking about. I think in these last talks, urea got
Any
mentioned.
movement in these talks? Because
I believe
the foreign minister Wang Yi came here.
I believe these were all mentioned,
I see.
but nothing has yet come.
I see.
So whether it's urea or rare earth, no containers or permits have actually been issued, but there is some hope on these things.
Okay.
And the third thing is pharma.
Oh, that's most important.
You know, our pharma to US is still exempt.
Yes.
How long it is exempt, we don't know. He's threatening 250% on pharma. Much of our APIs
Come from there.
are coming from China. We are doing the formulation.
Right.
So I think there are these things which have to be